All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Aravaipa Rides podcast. This is the Insomniac series wrap-up edition. With me, as has been all summer, is Marion Shoyu and Robert Cogburn. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We met recently, actually, just seems like. So we've got just a couple of races to talk about. Let's just jump right into the first of the ones that we will recap today. Vertigo. Vertigo was in August. It was held at White Tank Regional Park there on the west side. So our second west side race. Robert, you were there. Tell me how that race went for you.
So overall, the race went really well. But leading up to that race, all we heard about is the weather and how the rain had destroyed the trails and how enduro it was and
Yes.
how rough it was. So, of course, we always pre-ride regardless of how many times we've raced there. So pre-ride was pretty rough.
Yep.
And what I realized, even with myself, and I know a lot of my teammates do the same thing. So pre-ride, we're like, okay, stay to the right here. It's all tore up over there. Stay to the left. Watch this. And then come race time, you just forget all that. And so the race was actually really good.
Awesome.
A lot of the stuff that I saw during the pre-ride obviously is dark, so you don't see everything. But yeah, the race was great. Like, you just flew over everything that you were sketched about during the pre-ride. So overall, it was really good, and the weather held out for us. I know it rained right in the beginning,
right,
for the 6-hour solo and duo and everything. But yeah, other than that, it was great.
Yep. Yeah, I think for the short, that's also one of the shortest courses that we have. For the amount of trail that we traversed on that one, I had more warning signs than I've ever put up on any of them. And it was just because, going out the week before and seeing the conditions and realizing we had no time to get a crew together to maybe to put something to help us out. So I opted for the other, which was to sign everything, warning, slow down, whatever it was. But just to give you guys that extra heads up of I know you guys can handle it, but let's not get too surprised out there because It is dark. Marianne, how about you? How was your ride over at Vertigo?
I loved it. I did not pre-ride it. I was expecting it to look rough, but it was not as rough as I thought it'd be. It was pretty good. I usually really like this course, especially the back of the mountain after you get over that steep hill. And I loved the weather because it really felt like you were on another planet because you had the lightning all around you, but it was not like hitting the course. So yeah, really beautiful course, and really enjoyed myself on the race.
Awesome. Great segue. I would say that the Vertigo course arguably could be one of our actually most difficult of this 6-race series. Agree, disagree? I'm seeing nods. So
yeah, there's certain parts of it for sure.
Certainly. I mean, it certainly has a nice finish to it. But I think with the obviously you mentioned the back hill, the climb, and the technical descent. That combined, I think, with just getting out there through there's several washes, and they're not too difficult. But again, if you aren't paying attention at night, they could prove to be a little bit more than you'd see during the day. And thinking about the other courses from Sinister all the way through, we don't have a whole lot on this particular series of technical space. There's might be a spot here or there, but I'd say Vertigo might be your most. I think in regards to the weather, as you brought up, it's also the one that we have the most apparent possibility of weather. I know last year was the year we actually cut it short by about an hour or so. I don't remember the exact time, but it kind of got to the point where I was telling people, we're suggesting that you not go out for another lap and let's just kind of chill and see. And actually, most people at that point were ready to go. So we ended up calling the whole race. They didn't want to go afterwards, and it did downpour, so we wouldn't have been able to do it even if we had tried. But this year was great, right? I mean, we did have a little bit of rain right before. Everyone was kind of huddling, kind of looking at me. I was looking at all of you like, it's almost time. Who's going to step out first? But then, we said go, and the rain stopped. And I think, for the majority of the race is actually, nothing in the air. So fantastic. It turned out to be fantastic. Not so much for the runners the next day, but
yes, I think even with that rain, I don't think there was a delay, was there? I think
no.
I think it was 20 minutes before the race, so I think we were able to go off on time.
Yeah, it was raining, but it wasn't strong.
Yeah.
It wasn't where we couldn't ride. And so I was ready to go. 6 o'clock, I was saying go. Depending on if you were going to run to the start or if you were just going to be there on your bike.
Yeah, I was kind of worried. I was expecting, at some point, the thunder and lightning is too close. We have to cut it short. And I had time to do 3 laps, and it was fine. And it rained like right when I crossed the finish line on my third lap. I was like, okay, this is perfect.
Yep. It was a real good night, I think. And I think it was just enough rain to keep the dust down. It hadn't been raining all day, so it wasn't wet and soggy.
Right.
But like just make it, a little bit soft and easy to ride. And like I said, perfect conditions. All right. Vertigo, any other thoughts on it before we step up to the next one?
No, I think for me, like every time we talk about the white tanks or think the white tanks, it's like nobody wants to drive all the way out there. But when we race, we have a blast.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. Yeah, it's kind of kind of hidden gem, I guess, if you will. Nobody wants to drive all the way out there, but it's a fun. It's more of a true mountain biker's course. Has a little bit of everything.
Sure.
Right. So yeah.
Yep.
It's worth it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and if you talk to anyone who's on the west side, I mean, they love it. They know that Estrella has its good and its bad, but they all love white tanks. Whenever I talk to them, they like that course among some of the others. So it's just I think some of us on the east side are a little just biased about the drive out there for it. Like,
Exactly.
We have so many options here. It's hard to sometimes just tear yourself away to get there. But we throw a race there, so at least once a year we'll make the drive out. Actually, there was something I wanted to talk about, and Vertigo is really our second of the full-fledged junior races. Made a slight change, cut out that backside for them.
Right.
They still had to do the mile flat turns at the very bottom. But we had a fairly good turnout, both the guys and the girls coming out. So a nice podium that went out there, and I think that's just going to hopefully continue as we continue to flesh out the juniors course. Definitely will come back next year with a full juniors setup for all 6 races, and really get some of the next generation kids in there.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just going to continue to grow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, then our last race of the series, that's Hangover. Hangover's had some, not to say a storied past, but it's had a different past with Aravaipa, where it used to be the lead-up race to our big running event at the end of October, and it was kind of like the last opportunity for a training, an organized training race to lead up to it, and then it fell into the Insomniac series and took over and became over part of that. Hangover is the entire Pemberton course over at McDowell. And probably one of the rare feats where we actually stick to just one trail, one loop of one trail. But Pemberton's pretty good, and it offers a little bit for everybody. So I'll start with you, Marianne. How did you fare over there? What was your night like?
I loved it too. I really like this this trail. I think I actually preferred we did it clockwise, right, this time for the race?
We did. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I like the clockwise better as opposed to the other way. It's really nice. Like, I feel like all the climbing is in the first part, and then it's just like fun and flowy, single track.
Yep.
Ran into a couple of cacti, but it was good. Not as bad as Robert.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Did you hear?
What did you?
It's funny you mentioned that. I think that was probably the one, if you want to call it criticism or complaint or even just a comment, was the clockwise versus counterclockwise.
Oh, really? Is it a complaint?
Not so much complaint. It wasn't a true on, like, I want to put something in the box for you here. But, just like, I guess, and I didn't realize this as much as I've been out there riding, a lot of people prefer the counterclockwise direction on that particular loop. I've honestly, after all these years, I've actually never gone counterclockwise on a bike on that loop. So I'm like, wait, is that almost like, you can do that? You can go that direction? Like, I thought it was just, I always start with the climb and I finish with the flow. And I've never even thought about, like, it's like going to Subway. It's like I get the same sandwich every time. They have barbecue chicken. I had no idea there was something else out there. So, I've started thinking, and like maybe we'll try and do like each year kind of flip and flop, like some races are known for doing that, and maybe give everybody the opportunity to try it both ways, and for those who haven't, like myself, maybe opportunity to actually ride it in one direction and see. Robert, thoughts on the directions, I guess, first, and then we'll talk about your race.
Directions. I've done numerous different venues at the race, so we've done it both ways.
Of course.
I think the way that you guys do it, is challenging in the beginning because you have all the rocky climb.
Yeah.
And then and then of course coming down after Jackass Junction, coming down Pemberton, just the switchbacks, you're just flying the whole way. The opposite direction, at least the climb is smooth.
Right.
On the way out, and then the rocky descent. I mean, you can fly on that pretty good too. So I've done it both. I like both. I mean, I don't. I mean, no matter what, you're doing a downhill on the way back,
sure.
right? So.
Yep.
So either way is good for me.
Gotcha. And how was your race out there?
Good. As a lot of people know,
right.
Pretty rough race for me. Yeah, that one is a little different for me. So leading up to this race, like you and I were talking, Aaron, a couple days ago, where like a few of the races before, I didn't turn my light on until like halfway through the race. So I would still see the lights behind me, but I'd break away. They couldn't see me and stuff like that. So this race, of course, going out at 7:45, it's already dark.
Right.
So you see the lights very well behind you, and whoever was in second, it was just too close for my comfort. I knew I still had a little bit of a lead and a gap, but I would constantly, I don't know why I was doing it this race, but constantly look over my shoulder and just see a light coming through the hills. And it was just so I kept pushing myself faster and faster and harder to break away. And I'm pretty sure, I think even Steve Carlson said that it has a little caution or a critical turn or something sign there. But yeah, I came around that corner. There's a little bit of a hump there, and then there's some railroad ties. The last thing I remember is kind of coming up over that hump, kind of getting air a little bit, and just sliding out. Went down pretty hard. Felt the leg right away. Jumped back up, panicking because I was waiting for lights to come around the corner, and jumped back on. Stabbed myself in the leg. Realized I didn't have a seat. And my first reaction is like, look for it, leave it, look for it, leave it. I finally got my handlebars, started shining my light down, saw my seat, grabbed it, threw it my jersey. We jumped on the bike, pushed down one pedal stroke, chain pops off. Just all this adrenaline, just panicking at this point.
Right.
So quickly thought, well, if I go all the way down on my gears, the chain will be looser. So I did that, jumped back on. It kind of skipped around a few times and just took off. So for the last 8.5 miles, stood up in a panic, just pedal, coast, pedal, coast, looking for lights. End up winning the race. So that's kind of the silver lining of this story, you know. And then as I was getting cleaned up by the medical folks, Dave Tanner, one of my teammates, had notified me that my frame was cracked as well, the rear triangle. So just kept adding, pain and everything. But at the end of the day, won the race. Still a good race. Should have the bike back this week, so we'll get it all put back together and back on the trails. So yeah, definitely one for the ages.
For sure, and a good story. And for anyone listening, yes, we're probably laughing inappropriately, but that's because we've all heard the story a couple of times, and most of us were there when it happened, or at least the aftermath immediately. So for us, it's at this point, it's the laughing stage. I know there's somebody out there.
I can laugh now too. I can laugh as well.
Right, yeah.
So.
Crash. One for the books.
Yeah, so I mean, the S-Works held up for the most part, but yeah.
Right.
Well, we can laugh now. I already told you to pick better line, so now we're all good. Yeah.
Slow down, maybe. I don't know. Don't panic so much, but.
Right. There you go. Know yourself, right?
Yeah.
I think I know the section roughly, and you had to describe it, so I have to only imagine exactly where it's at. But in that section where there are a lot of, they're not full washes, but you're kind of doing a lot of up and down, and you can kind of get lost with lights sometimes, right? Like you could be up, they could be down. It's a little deceptive sometimes, because you don't know. Well, are they two two hills back, or are they one? Because I just saw them for that flash, and then they just dropped in while I popped up. So it can be a tough section, and I know it as a runner and as a rider both. Having those headlamps behind me and not being able to know, like, are they right there, or do I actually have some buffer, and do I, can I not, do I not need to take this little sprint or something like that? So tough section to ride, that's for sure.
Well, and the bad thing, I looked at my times afterwards, and the previous year I ran like a 59:53, and this year was an hour and 14 seconds. So I know that the stretch that I was like trying to get away, if I wouldn't have crashed, I would have probably had a much better time. But yeah, because that's the thing. I was like, dang it, man! I knew I was on a pretty good ride, but.
Well, that's good. I think I shaved 20 minutes from last year just because I didn't get lost. Because last year I got lost, and like right when you get to the finish, I took some trail on the left and I started climbing, and then realizing that, oh no, that was not the correct
That's a
trail.
deceptive turn too, because there is a distinct left turn, but Pemberton veers off to the right, and you have to get right to here before it opens up in front of you to the right. It only looks like you have this option, so you commit to it, and if you do, then you're
right. You're lost.
You can
Yeah,
get
it was
100
like a
yards down
climb.
before you realize it. We did make a specific effort on that corner to sign it a little bit better
nice.
this year to just again make sure, because we're riding through here pretty quick, and you don't have it's a split second decision on that one specifically, because I think you're coming out of another wash at that piece too, and it's kind of close in with the brush and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that was Hangover. That was the final in the sixth. Robert, in talking about the series specifically, your category, the 3 hour, or excuse me, the single lap male, was tight right up until it could have gone either way. In fact, for the three of you that ended up on the podium, if anyone had a bad race, particularly a bad race, and dropped out of the regular order, I should say, of things. It could have been anyone's game, essentially. So that was pretty tight and pretty exciting to watch. That, not that I wanted anything, bad to happen, but that's what it is. I mean, you always look for that close competition. Like, where is it going to be? Like, can something change on the very last after 6 races over the course? There were others that were a little bit different. The 6 hour men's wasn't quite as close, but that one could have been if Steve had a rough time on his race. Jason could have overtaken him and gotten the first place on the podium. On the women's side, the single lap women weren't quite. They were, I think, second and third were a little bit. There wasn't a third. So second was a little bit further down. I think Kayla might have had to have a really, really bad finish to have dropped enough for Sherry to have caught her up. So it would have been possible, but not as, like, I think you guys had the tightest going through with Brian and Joe. So it was, like I said, it was exciting. It was like, who can maybe prevail. And it could it be someone from the back, or is it going to be you again? So fantastic story again too. Obviously your finish, like after all that crash, to still come in first, and by a few minutes over Brian too. It was a little bit.
Well, the funny thing is, when we're lining up at the starting line, we 3 or 4 minutes, we're sitting there, and he's talking on the mic and everything. He mentions something about, this could go any way. Not say anything, Robert. And all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, I'm laying on the ground.
It was one of those things too, because I of course, it crossed my mind, and I'm like, don't say that. Don't say that. You have a microphone. You've got the guys in front of you who have to go into this competition for the next hour. Don't say it. And of course, what happened? It came right out. It's like when you're throwing a baseball and you're like, okay, I don't want to throw it at that. I don't want to throw it at his head. I don't want to throw it at his head, and you throw it right at his head.
Yeah, no, I did the same thing at the usury race. I told the medics, I'm like, hey, I'm glad you guys are here, but we're not going to need you tonight. And I don't know, a few minutes later, one of our riders will come back ran into a cactus.
Yep.
We spent the next hour over there, unplucking them. So
might have been the most catastrophic of our injuries this year.
Yeah.
That was one because you missed usury. You missed Stunner, correct?
Yeah, I was on there. Yeah.
You were in France. Yeah. Anyway.
While we were racing.
Yeah. This kid, 14, I don't remember his name.
Yeah, his name's Ethan Hansey.
Ethan. Yeah. Probably in the first half mile, even probably less than that. Full blown into Ochoa. He had it up, down, left, right, front, and back. I mean, they spent another hour and a half pulling the tines out. It was a.
Well, we had talked before the race, like, hey, run your first lap hard. See, because the 3 hour, kind of see how you feel and all this.
Yep.
And I'm getting ready to go out, and I'm like, what is that? What's going on? He's walking back like this, just covered. So I'm like, well, that didn't work.
Yep,
but
that was and arguably one of our easier courses if you want to rank them, difficult to easy. One of our easiest courses, but we had 2 pretty nasty accidents where Jeff dislocated his shoulder. I'm not sure exactly the injury, but it was good to see him last night at the wrap party.
Yeah.
Because he's doing a lot better and he's getting more range of motion. He still doesn't quite have the same as his left hand, but his right's getting there. But yeah, on one of our easier courses, we had more accidents than any of the others. And then of course, Hangover I think was just kind of a rough one for a lot of people, whether it was feeling more nauseous than the average or something like that, just not having their great game, their great race. again, it seemed like it didn't affect anyone's actual performance too much, but there were more people that came back and said that was the worst race ever. And they went through the heat at Estrella, they went through the rain at Vertigo, they went through all these other experiences, and everyone seemed to have a collectively poor
maybe the change of
experience.
seasons. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that, I guess, next year. The rider experience at Hangover needs to come up a little bit.
There you go.
All right, let's see. So the series wrap party ended up last night. We were able to give away our awards. We will have something coming up for you too. So don't worry. Don't think that I didn't.
I missed it.
Get you. We missed you last night, but we'll have all your swag and your medal, your podium medal as well. We'll do like one of those Oscar, like in a ceremony that was taking place at another time. Marianne was awarded her first place. So yeah, Marianne did finish first in the 3-hour female. It's a bit of a stacked category because there were only a few other women that raced throughout the course of the season, and no one did enough to qualify. So for the series points, there wasn't any, didn't have any competition on that side, although at least you had a few races with some competition out there by some other women in the category. So another thing for next year, we need to bring more of the ladies out to race. Because we have a fair amount of women who are regulars, yourself, Kayla Hawk, others as well, who come out, just not enough. We could always use more. And I know they're out there. I see them riding when I go out riding and stuff. So I know there's plenty of women bikers out there. We just need to bring them into the racing fold and introduce them. So if you know anyone, give them a call.
We're working on it. I don't want to keep being first by default.
Right, I hear you. On that note, we do have a women's weekend coming up. We can talk about that for a minute too. It's actually not a weekend anymore, so it's the women's event. The Suaro Soiree is in November. It's on the November 13th. It's a women's only event. It has clinics and skills sessions during the first half of the day. She's also going to do some cool stuff like, what should you pack in your pack when you're going out on a race, or if you're going out on a long ride, what are the things that you should have, as well as she's going to talk a little bit about some nutrition and hydration. So from beginner to expert, a little bit of something for everybody out there. And then the women's only races will kick off that afternoon. So a 10-mile and a 20-mile. So hopefully we can help spread the word through some of these events too. All right. That's what I was gonna ask. So, Robert, you were one of the few people who made it through all 6 races, raced in all 6 races. What was your favorite? What was your, you might have had a favorite race, but what was your best experience? So those are 2 similar but different questions. There might have been, something different at a race that was just a better experience, but a race, that was your best or your favorite specific course or specific event itself.
So I guess a couple things. So the Estrella course was different this year.
Yes.
I don't think I think maybe a couple of the folks that raced it had ridden it before, but never raced on it. So that was a fun course because it's same thing as white tanks. You think white tanks, you're like, I don't want to drive all the way out there. But same thing with Australia. It's never anyone's favorite course, but the course that you guys picked to race on was actually really fun.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll be in the bucket for next year as well. But that was a good course. And for me, what's weird is I remember getting there like at 5 o'clock and pre-riding, and it was hot. It was 100 plus.
Yep.
And I remember just like, okay, I'm not going to push too hard. I'm just going to go ride it. And then KOM'd like 3 sections, and then when I raced, I didn't beat any of those times, so I don't know what happened. But it's just weird how that happens, right?
Sure.
So,
slightly
was
cooler weather. Second time around, so you were more experienced on the trail, but you were slower in every segment.
Because it's not pre-ride. That's why I pre-ride. Like, where can I go fast? What do I have to be careful with? And stuff like that. So, I don't know what happened on that one, but good race anyhow.
Excellent.
And then I think probably the next one would be the white tanks. Just hearing all the stuff throughout the week, and then going out, and when the race was on, it was perfect.
Yeah.
And then of course just McDowell. McDowell's always fun.
Sure.
I don't think I've ever wrecked a McDowell before.
Okay.
So something new for me, I guess.
Yep.
But still a fun course, and like I said, either way is fun. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Marianne, how about you? You got in 5 of the races. Yeah. What was your favorite race, and what was your favorite experience overall?
Well, first of all, I would agree that the Istria course was really cool. It was nice to actually race on something different than usual. And I really enjoyed White Tank. I think everything was perfect. Even if it rained, it was just beautiful to be out there with the lightning, and you could see the light from the city. It was just gorgeous. And I don't like, if you're right during the day, like there's no way you're gonna have that experience.
Right.
So yeah, I usually love that course because it's the most technical out of all the different courses. Don't really care for some of the kitty litter at McDowell, even if it's always a good time. So yeah, I think that was my favorite experience. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I think two good choices, having been at both races myself. Estrella, no matter what, is our hottest race of the year. It's always like, it always ends up being like the hottest week of the year. You know, it's June, so the monsoons haven't rolled in. It's hot and dry, and just, you know, it's 113 when you start, and it's 112 when you finish. And it just doesn't ever cool off. So it's always a little bit tough, and that's a whole different aspect of like the weather, you know, on the race course itself. And as we said earlier, and you were just saying again, the weather at Vertigo, it always seems to be like one of the wetter, nastier monsoon weekends, and we get caught up in it. And one way or the other, you know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. This year was actually pretty good, but it plays a part in those two races particularly. It doesn't play right in the other four so much. It's you know, weather is what weather is, but these two particularly just have that moniker that goes with them. We'll never get away from it. No. It becomes part of the whole thing.
Yeah, and the weather at Hangover was perfect. I thought it was a really nice course, but I don't know, the rain kind of like changed. It just changes everything. So yeah, and then you can smell the desert. It was really cool. Right. I don't think I actually did too well at if I'm remembering the Estrella one. I think I did 2 laps, and I was like, I'm done. I'm going home. I'm exhausted because it's too hot. So yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's it is. It's just a hot one. It's a tough one to deal with. All right. Well, I think that might put a wrap on our Insomniac series for 2022. Pretty successful overall. I mean, you know, we talked about a couple of injuries and crashes and some of the courses that we don't like for whatever reason. But I think, you know, overall, you know, the races have gotten better from what I saw last year to what I saw this year. The few changes that we made to courses are just a stretch. Adding the juniors, I think, is you know, another big change that we'll continue to, like I said, kind of work through and make more viable. And that's another one. I was just talking about the women, but I think getting more of the kids out, and not just the 16, 17, like, you know, older high school kids, but, you know, getting some of those like 10, 12, like I'm just getting on my first big kid bike, right? But I want a mountain bike. I want to go off road. I'm already ready, Dad, kind of stuff. So getting some of those kids out there to experience it too, for sure. We'll explore more of that into 2023. So what do we have up for Aravaipa Rides coming up? We actually have a break in the races. We don't come back until November for our next race. So Tonto Mountain and the Swaro Soiree will both be on November 13th. So we're switching back to day. We can turn off our lights for a couple of hours and race during the day. And then in December 4th, we have our Frenzy Hills. That's back to McDowell. Use a little bit of Pemberton and also part of the long loop on the comp track.
Yeah.
So that's another fun one to come back for. Again, during the day. So it's you know, some of us might be biased towards the day or the night, but yeah, we're flipping back. Our weather's starting to cool down here in Phoenix, so we can start riding comfortably during the day, right? Thank you guys for coming out all season long to do this. Would you consider doing it again next year?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
For sure.
Yeah, no, I think we've got a pretty good team here, and we can keep building on this part of the Insomniac too, like the commentary and stuff like that too. So again, yeah, thank you. It's been awesome having you guys here for the other podcasts that we did. We look forward to, since you both said yes, bringing you back in sometime early April. We'll sit down and break down what's coming up for 2023.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you all next time.